descending into the poisonous depths of Blighttown, arriving in the beautiful city of Anor Londo, getting trapped inside a painted world. Those are just a few of the incredible locations you explore during Dark Souls, and yet, for all their magnificence, none of them hold a candle to the subject of this video. Well, subjects actually, the Undead Burg and Undead Parish, a pair of levels so perfect that I believe together they are the best From Software has ever produced. There's a simple explanation as to why they're so outstanding too. They are essentially a sequel to the first chapter of Demon Souls' Boletarian Palace. It sounds outlandish, but even a cursory glance at both games' beginnings makes Demon Souls' influence on Dark Souls abundantly clear. Demon Souls opens in an outpost where you learn the basics and face off against the towering Vanguard demon, after which you're transported to a hub area and meet a collection of characters including this crestfallen fella.
You came for Demon Souls? Or to save this land and be remembered as a hero? It's all the same.
Dark Souls also begins in a separate area, the Undead Asylum, where you get to grips with combat before battling an asylum demon who looks a lot like the Vanguard. Again, you're then taken to a hub area where you make some familiar new friends.
Let me guess, fate of the undead, right? Well, you're not the first, but there's no salvation here.
Honestly, there are so many similarities between the two games that detailing every single one of them would take all day, but I will highlight a few of the most relevant as we progress. The Undead Burg and Parish are different though. Rather than there being the odd one-off similarity, there are so many in quick succession that they cannot be considered anything other than a near-direct sequel to Boletarian Palace. There are three facets of the Burg and Parish which developer From Software gives this treatment to: combat, loops, and world building. Starting with combat, during Boletarian Palace's first half, From Software focuses on slowly but surely building up your confidence. Your initial encounters are with bog standard dredgelings. You then head up some stairs to find a few more, joined by an enemy on a raised platform wielding a crossbow, and next you face a duo with shields who provide a tougher challenge. After that, firebombs are thrown at you from an angle you won't initially expect while navigating a narrow path, before you have to contend with dredgelings while firebombs explode around you. Finally, as you near the end of the section, a cannonball is pushed down a flight of stairs directly towards you. The Undead Burg is a near mirror. Your initial encounters are with bog standard hollows. You then head up some stairs to find a few more, joined by an enemy on a raised platform wielding a crossbow, and next you face a duo with shields who provide a tougher challenge. After that, firebombs are thrown at you from an angle you won't initially expect while navigating a narrow path, before you have to contend with hollows while firebombs explode around you. Finally, as you near the end of the section, a flaming barrel is pushed down a flight of stairs directly towards you. Although there are some differences between the Undead Burg and the first half of Boletarian Palace, most of the lessons you learn in each are taught practically identically. You get to grips with fighting each game's easiest enemies before a ranged aggressor is added to the mix. You practice battling shielded foes away from any others. You're given multiple warnings about the possibility of enemies and projectiles coming from above or behind you, and it's made clear that inanimate objects can sometimes pose a threat as well. Each encounter is different, and every one of them teaches you something new. It's all very confidently executed. Everything combat-wise I've described so far though screams repeat rather than sequel, but it's after dodging the flaming barrel that the Burg and Parish show their credentials as an upgrade. Reaching the battlements of Boletarian Palace, heading in one direction leads you to a dead end and an extremely tough Red-Eye Knight. Thankfully, he's set apart from everything else, and after a death or two, it's likely you'll learn that it's probably best to return when you're a tad stronger. The other path leads you to a Blue-Eye Knight, a tricky customer nonetheless, but not quite as nightmarish, and for defeating him, you're rewarded with a shortcut that connects to the level's start and gives you easy access to its second half should you die. The Undead Burg isn't so different, but From Software ups the stakes. Instead of a Red-Eye Knight, an equally formidable Black Knight lies in wait separate from any other dangers. Again, you can take him on, or instead choose to avoid him until you become more confident in your own abilities. To open up a shortcut, you no longer have to deal with with a knight at all. Instead, you have to slay the hulking Taurus demon. It's a great example of how the Burg and Parish up the ante, as a sequel should do. At surface level, the basics are the same. There's a tough enemy you can choose to ignore and another you have to deal with, but the level of spectacle has been increased significantly. Opening up the shortcut at the end of the palace's first half is satisfying enough, but it's nothing compared to kicking down the ladder which leads to the bonfire near the start of the Burg after slaying a gigantic monster wielding a great axe. You've experienced nigh on the exact same challenges across both, except one has a far more satisfying payoff at its end. The Undead Parish is very different from Boletaria's second half in terms of combat, with few similarities of note. That is a good thing, as it means it's considerably more varied. Where the palace mostly consists of more encounters with dredgelings, soldiers and blue-eye knights, the parish packs in an absurd amount in comparison. There's another Black Knight off the beaten path in case the first wasn't tough enough. There are rats, a fangboar, lots of Balder Knights, Dark Souls' version of the blue-eye knights, a larger Berenike Knight, Berenique, I don't know, and even a channeler who dishes out magic damage from a distance. And after all of that, you also have to face off against the bell gargoyles on the roof. It should also be noted that while they're not based on anything featured in Demon Souls' first proper level, they are reminiscent of the Man-Eaters, a real nightmare encounter later on in that game. By the by, what are the gargoyles and earlier the Taurus demon weak against? Firebombs and gold pine resin. Where do you find both? In the Undead Burg. From Software giving you the exact tools needed to make life easier is a Demon Souls staple that was first used in, you guessed it, the Palace, where turpentine and firebombs can be found ahead of you taking on the level's boss, Phalanx, who is weak to fire. Looking at combat then, it's not unreasonable to claim that From Software essentially repeats most of Boletarian Palace's first half during the Undead Burg, but betters its second half offering with the Parish. That is not the case when it comes to the pair's looping level design, however, which Dark Souls matches and improves on throughout. Looping level design is exactly what it sounds like. You start at a certain point, explore, and eventually loop back round to where you began, and it's a hallmark of early Souls titles especially that From Software has unfortunately opted to use less and less over time. It would be no exaggeration to state that it's one of the biggest reasons why many hold the series' older entries in particular in such high regard. Demon Souls is packed full of loops, and Boletarian Palace features the best examples of them. You begin at the palace's entrance but are unable to enter, so you head left past a closed gate and journey upwards to the battlements. There you defeat the Blue-Eye Knight and head down a flight of stairs to unlock said gate and create a shortcut, thus completing the first loop. You can then retrace your steps and explore the level's second half, at the end of which you'll find a lever which grants access to its boss. A foe you encounter within Dark Souls' painted world, funnily enough. Then, all that's left to do is unlock a second gate opposite the first, which leads you back to the palace's entrance. And thus, you've completed two fairly large loops which are both checkpoints in all but name, one which eliminates the need to traverse the level's first half, and another which opens up a direct path to the boss from the palace's start. It probably comes as no surprise at this stage to learn that the Undead Burg and Parish follow a similar but slightly modified format. You enter the Burg and get past its opening encounters, light a nearby bonfire and head up to the battlements to fight the Taurus demon. Victory is sweet, as dispatching the foul beast grants access to a ladder which leads back to near the start of the Burg. That's loop number 1. Quite the gauntlet awaits you as you fight your way through the Parish, but again there's a light at the end of the tunnel as you unlock another shortcut immediately prior to its boss, an elevator which takes you down to Firelink's Shrine. This second loop doesn't precisely match the palaces as it ferries you further back than the start of the Burg, but the principle remains the same regardless. It's a checkpoint which allows you to easily return to the Bell Gargoyles should they get the better of you the first time you fight them. While the two larger loops are practically identical in both function and position then, what the Burg and Parish have that Boletarian Palace doesn't are an array of smaller loops to supplement them. Their inclusion is what makes them a cut above Demon Souls' first outing. There are plenty of smaller loops which From Software uses to maximise the space available. Dropping down to grab this large soul of a lost undead for example, the path leads you towards some particularly sneaky dredgelings and a ladder that brings you up a level so you can jump back to where you began. The same is true of the passage you can access after defeating the first two shielded enemies, with a ladder again offering passage back to the main route through the Burg or a secondary area accessed by leaping off a roof before you're then also returned to familiar ground. In the Parish there's a medium-sized loop or two as well, such as this one which takes you past the boar, a few dredgelings and finally several knights, after which you're able to open the portcullis behind the armoured pig to negate those encounters in future. There are several others I've not mentioned too. Again, these loops of varying size probably don't seem like anything special nowadays, but that's only because From Software has been using them for such a long time. Back in 2011, they were a revelation and hugely contributed to Dark Souls level design feeling like a true refinement over Demon Souls. Boletarian Palace did have secrets off the beaten path for you to find and multiple small areas you might miss. However, once you'd found and explored them, you would tend to end up retracing your steps to continue forward, rather than looping back to where you were organically. Finally, we arrive at Worldbuilding, one-off bits and bobs featured in the Undead Burg and Parish which add to their charm. Again, Boletarian Palace's DNA can be found everywhere. There's this red dragon which swoops into view at the palace's entrance, which you later cross paths with again when it tries to burn you to a crisp while you cross a bridge. In the Burg, it's a red wyvern which makes its presence known early on, before you later catch up with it when you arrive at the parish's own bridge. Both games' early stages also mark the first appearances of friendly knights who continue to pop out throughout their respective campaigns and even have near identical names. In Demon Souls, you meet Ostrava of Boletaria.
My thanks for your brave rescue. I am Ostrava of Boletaria. Accept this as a token of my gratitude.
While in Dark Souls, you cross paths with Solaire of Astora.
I am Solaire of Astora, an adherent of the Lord of Sunlight.
Rest in peace, my incandescent chum. There's also this creepy merchant found in Boletaria who is eerily similar to this unsettling fella who sits off the beaten path in the Undead Burg. On top of these smaller additions, both are also imbued with a superb sense of place. During Boletarian Palace's first half, you are constantly ascending, and as you do so, you're able to catch sight of areas you'll visit later, for example the bridge you spend most of your time traversing during its second level. Likewise, in the Undead Burg and Parish, you're nearly always heading upwards, and are able to spot even more, whether it's Anor Londo above or Firelink Shrine below. The Palace, Burg and Parish are all believable places which feel attached to a wider world, and that goes such a long way towards adding weight to everything you do. Hopefully, this video has served to drive home how Boletarian Palace seemingly ended up becoming an unintentional testing grounds of sorts, a tightly designed, wonderful testing ground which laid the foundations for what followed in Dark Souls. Consequently, it's no wonder the Undead Burg and Parish turned out as wonderfully as they did. From Software didn't come at Dark Souls' early stages from a standing start, but rather were able to refine and expand upon their previous stellar work. The way combat complexity is slowly but assuredly introduced, the looping level design so beloved by fans, and the impeccable world building. Across each, From Software refines and adapts during the transition from Demon Souls to Dark Souls and creates something truly spectacular. Many levels include tougher tests, bigger bosses, or more intriguing environments, but nowhere does everything that makes the series such a joy to play come together in quite the same way. The Undead Burg and Undead Parish may be old hat at this point, however, they should always be remembered for their brilliance. Thanks for watching the video, boys, girls and chosen undead. If you had a good time, do consider liking, subscribing and sharing your thoughts, and hopefully we'll catch up again soon.